Hi, so we're going to talk here about enterprise architecture, get going on this discussion of enterprise architecture as strategy. I'll start the presentation that we've got. This is really focused on the book Enterprise Architecture Strategy, which we'll be reviewing this week and doing a bunch of the ratings out of it. What we really want to understand is enterprise architecture is it helps or impedes your day-to-day operations and efforts to exercise your business strategy. And what I mean by that is everyone's going to have an enterprise architecture, really. It's just a matter, is it good and is it well thought out or is it not? And you'll sort of deal with the results of that decision either way. What we want to do is make one that makes sense for the business and make sure that the architecture that your information is going to flow throughout your business is going to be helpful and actually help you to achieve your strategic objectives. Components of the enterprise architecture laid out here: business architecture, which is how the business is going to meet its goals. The application architecture, which is how the major software applications that you got to design, how they're going to interact with each other. And then your data architecture, how are you storing everything that's going to be important and relevant for the business going forward. And the technical architecture is the hardware and software infrastructure underneath all of that. So I'm going to go through this presentation with you here. I'm just going to draw out some of the key points because I want you to kind of read through it later and understand what we're trying to focus on within this book. Plus the book will help flesh out those details as well. The focus of EA is really to get your company where it wants to go in terms of understanding its information needs and being able to manage the information. So you need to understand, in order to do that, you need to understand the company vision. So you do this after the strategy portion. So we've already talked about strategy for the business early on. Now we're going to talk about how we translate that into EA. Two main problems that you're trying to address here. One is, as your technology grows, it becomes very complex. You need to be able to lay it out and have a place where you can understand exactly what's going on. Nothing worse than having to fight through your own systems and information and try to understand where information is located. Also, make sure it's aligned. So you can have a lot of, as a business moves, some of the infrastructure within the business doesn't necessarily naturally move with it. And EA is supposed to be designed so that as your business strategies move, the information needs move with it and the information systems can flex along with those. So benefits of having a good EA is going to cut costs and improve your productivity, give you that long-term flexibility to really stay aligned with the business as it moves forward and as the strategies change. The other thing is it reduces the risks of buying systems that aren't going to integrate into your business environment. That's a little bit tactical, but it's still important. If you have a good EA and it's documented, it's not just sitting on the shelf as some document, but if everyone understands how stuff integrates, then when you're going to try and rapidly deploy new things that will make sense to the business, you'll know how those can actually be deployed or whether they can be. So beginning an EA creation really starts with understanding the operating model for your business. And there's four main models that we're going to talk about here. And then once you understand the model, then you implement the model via your enterprise architecture, the hard part. Some companies will attack enterprise architecture with a lot of drawings. And so they look at the problem and they say, well, what we really need to do is just understand the systems that we have. And they will start just documenting a bunch of stuff. And you can spend a lot of time doing that. At the end of the day, you're probably not going to you'll have a great set of documents and you'll spend a bunch of money. But you won't get the best information out of those tools unless they're being updated or they're sort of integrated into how you run an EA. So you'll see a lot of EA IT departments and big companies will have enterprise architecture systems that are integrated with their operations as well. That's sort of self-documenting kinds of things. Those are the kinds of systems that you really look for, and that's what they talk about when they talk about these EA systems. But the key to really effective enterprise architecture is just to understand, identify the processes, data, technologies, and customer interfaces that the operating model that you need to reflect can use to go from a vision to reality. So you focus on those key systems and processes that are going to make you successful as a business. You don't necessarily have to capture everything, and that's what's key about this. You can really go down a lot of rabbit holes. We don't want to do that. We want to encapsulate our enterprise architecture in some core diagram that represents the operating model of the business, and then build the system around that. So let's look at what distinguishes them. There's four main models that we're going to talk through, and I'll go through the next four charts. Unification, diversification, coordination, and then replication. All right, and we'll talk a little about each one. But basically, your unification diagram says that I've got key customers, got some core processes, shared data, and I'm linking these technologies. And I just scanned this right out of the book, so I'm referencing it there. But the core technologies there are integrated over your core sets of processes. The data is going to be shared, but you're going to have high standardization and high integration. Remember, we talked about this in our strategy a little bit. There's 4 different layers of the strategy. This one's high standardization and high integration. So you've got everything in this linking technologies. You're bringing it all together. Your systems will reflect that within your diagram. So now you want to go through this diagram and identify what are the technologies, the software, and the business processes that are going to be leveraging those. And you just flesh out the enterprise architecture diagram from there. If you have a diversification kind of business, right, where you're just taking a lot of different businesses coming together, here you're going to have the same kind of thing. You're going to have some shared processes, but you're going to have business unit specific data and then business unit specific customers. And so you're going to need to take some of those technologies and break them out a little bit for each of those different business processes. So here's the business processes on the outside. You got a technology stack. You got all those technologies in there, and then you're going to be defining, different companies. The customer really is not as important as the companies themselves being defined. Low integration across all of these, low standardization, and what you're trying to do is keep track of those separated technologies and those separated processes. If you have a coordination kind of business where your processes are separated and each one's going to be managed by the business unit, but you're going to have single sort of data share, you're going to have high integration, but you're going to have low standardization across your processes. So in this case, what you've got is technology in a ring there, a whole bunch of different processes that are going to be leveraging that technology a little bit differently, your customer types, and then the big data store in the middle. And you flesh out then this diagram with all the different attributes of that. If your business strategy is replication, so you're taking what you do and you're replicating it across other areas of the business, other areas of the market, you're going to have some mandated processes and technologies. A lot of them aren't, but you're going to have data itself is not even going to be part of this picture necessarily. So low integration of all that, but high standardization going across. So those are the kinds of, you want to pick one of those and lay out your architecture based on that. Building the foundation for all of this is going to require that you implement even as you're trying to execute the business. So one of the realities of this is there's textbook kinds of things, and then there's reality of operating on a day-to-day basis. And so as we're still executing for the business and trying to mature what we do, we're still also trying to implement this EA. So the foundation really drives you to sort of a stepwise maturity model. You've got a business silo architecture at first. That's going to be maximizing your individual business unit needs. That's just the nature of how things typically lay out. If left undisturbed, that's what they're going to go to. All right, that's human nature. But you move from there to a standardized technology architecture, where you're now just starting to standardize your technology so that you can get some of those efficiencies that come from centralization. Then you're going to optimize that core architecture, where you get data and your process standardization going alongside your technology standardization. And now you're starting to really get some efficiency out of this. And then the fourth level, where you get to business modularity, where you can manage and reuse loosely coupled IT business processes and preserve all those global standards while enabling local differences. So when we talk about big data and 12-factor apps and using the cloud, that's really what we're getting at there. How can a business get at the same data stores, the same standards, the same architecture, but be able to implement their particular business processes in a way that's modular? That's what we're going to be going after. Increasing maturity takes time, so you got to be patient, make sure you get it right, don't skip any of the stages. It can't be sustainable if the culture hasn't followed along. So you can't jump from the siloed architecture to the cloud one after the other without at least stepping through some of those other areas to bring the business along and make them understand sort of what's going on and why they're getting value out of these investments and changes. Focus on the strategic processes, not on everything. Focus on the things that are going to make a difference for the business in the big scheme. The rest of it'll follow suit over time. And move incrementally. Like I said, don't go 4 steps at once. Don't try to swallow everything at once. Get some successes as you go and move that way. And recognize there may be other architecture levels that you need to account for. So while we may be looking at the big business architecture for the company, there may be divisions of the company that have other sort of systems that are in place, and they need to think about it themselves too. Other thing, big one here. Do it in-house. Don't outsource this. You can outsource the implementation, but don't outsource the thinking or how you decide on what to go employ. And then aim for modularity. Again, what you're aiming for down the road is the ability to be flexible and make decisions rapidly based on the customer need. That is what we've been talking about all the way up till now. This is enterprise architecture, is architecting your entire IT operation so that you can get after that easily, right? All you want is you want the data and the information for your business to make the best decision based on its strategies at any given point in time without having to wait. That demands modularity. It demands that we have this flexibility built into the system, and that we have some consistency and integrated data across the business. It's a long way to get there, but that's the vision, that's the goal. And once you can get that, then your business is nimble and your information is there on demand and doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing as an IT system. So 5 key decision areas that drive where you need to make investments to get there. 1, your IT principles. What's the strategic role of IT in the business? Your EA, organizing logic for doing your IT architecture. Your IT infrastructure, the centrally coordinated shared IT services. Your business application needs, and your prioritization and investment, where you're going to be investing in IT, including project approval and justification. So your business case techniques. Those are the key decision areas that are going to drive where your investment needs to be made. Outsourcing can be useful. So we said don't outsource the EA, but you can outsource parts of it. And most people will outsource, if not most, some of the product at least, especially the services. 3 main types of outsourcing to consider in EA are strategic partnerships, where you're going to have multiple vendors providing an integrated operational service, co-sourcing alliance, where you're going to have companies engaged together to develop clearly delineated responsibilities. And that's useful when you have kind of critical skills in each of the companies, but they're not necessarily shared. Then co-sourcing can be very valuable there. And then transactional relationships. This is just specific processes or tasks. Clearly delineate them, and then you go execute them like a supplier kind of thing. So in summary, you got foundations for success here. Commit to the foundation, initiate the change from the top, remove all the barriers, feed the core. Do some experimentation. Like we said, don't do it all at once. Maybe try some success, get some successes early on. Use your architecture as a compass. So it tells you where you want to go from a business perspective, from an IT perspective, but also it's a good communication tool to make sure everyone understands the vision, so that when everyone's making these day-to-day decisions that we all make during our jobs and during our decision making as just implementing day-to-day for the business, we can start thinking about how does this actually impact, and does this make sense based on where we're trying to go as a company. Don't skip the stages. Repeat that. Implement project one project at a time. Outsource where you need to, but don't outsource the actual design. Make sure you're investing in your people so that they understand the EA and they're kind of up to speed. This is why we don't outsource the EA. You don't want a consulting company come in and do your enterprise architecture for you, and then they leave, and there's no one there that understands what the business is supposed to be accomplishing. So invest in your people with this. Reward them when they have that enterprise-wide thinking. Put them in positions to be successful and to make contributions to the company and to have success because of the implementation of the enterprise architecture. If you empower employees with the foundation for this execution and make sure that they understand how they support the business best, they can communicate that best with the business, they can deliver results for the business, and in the end, your information technology is going to be employing this architecture across the business in a way that is moving the strategy forward and creating success from a business perspective.